Hello, everybody. My name is Evan Freiberger, and today we're going to be talking about some severe weather and potentially a tornado threat that is coming to the northern United States. And also, we're going to be briefly touching on some temperature changes, welcome temperature changes. I mean, we've kind of been in a stuck pattern for a little bit. That heat has been sticking around a little bit longer than a lot of folks would like. And thankfully, we might be about to see that start to move out of there with this system that's coming into the United States right now. And then after that, we're going to be talking about maybe a tropical signal that is starting to show up on some of our ensemble models, and we'll be going over what we can actually know about that and what is pretty much just going to be pure speculation at this point. So let's go ahead and get right into it. But before we do, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and here we go. So as you can see later on today and right now, we're going to be starting to see some storms try to pop up here in the southern plains, going all the way up into the central and northern plains. We've got a marginal risk. It's a 1 out of 5, not too bad for severe weather there in the green. And then in the yellow, we have a slight risk. This is 2 out of 5, a little bit more of an elevated risk, and that's going to be mainly for Sioux Falls and Sioux City. Also, we're going to be talking about a little bit of a tornado risk out there for North Dakota, South Dakota, parts of Minnesota, and then also a little tiny portion there of Nebraska. We're talking about Grand Forks, Fargo, Sioux Falls, Sioux City, but the main threats for today are going to be those damaging winds. A small chance of damaging winds as far south as Texas, all the way up into Minnesota. That's in that brown, and then a little bit of a more dangerous threat, but still kind of on the muted side for damaging winds here in the yellow for Sioux Falls and Sioux City. So we're talking about 60-mile-per-hour winds and above being possible there today. And then going into the hail risk, you can also see that we might see some 1-inch hail out there in the yellow, a little bit more likely. And then in the brown, we're talking about a lower chance, but still possible, all the way from the northern United States going into the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle. Now, moving into tomorrow's risk for severe weather, it's a little bit more elevated. As you can see, we have a slight risk up there for parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. We're talking about Minneapolis, Duluth, St. Cloud, Rochester, and Cedar Rapids. Also, we've got a marginal risk around that in the green, extending all the way into areas like Wisconsin, going into Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, little bitty parts there of Nebraska. So a lot of folks need to be weather aware tomorrow, and the tornado risk is going to be a little bit more elevated. You can see we got a 5% there in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern Iowa, then a 2% around that, and that basically means you either have a 2 or 5% chance of seeing a tornado within a 25-mile radius of you. So not a super high chance, but definitely something to keep an eye out on tomorrow. If something gets crazy, I'll go live for it. Also, damaging winds are going to be a possibility here in the yellow, a higher possibility there for 60-mile-per-hour winds and above, and the brown, you guys already know what that means. And then also we get a hatched risk for hail, which is a new thing that we haven't really seen, in a couple of days, but we do have this little black outlined region, and that's going to be for like Minneapolis, Rochester, Eau Claire, Duluth, Virginia, Ely, Grand Rapids. It's in St. Clouds, Brooklyn Park there as well in northern Iowa. Could see some 2-inch hail and above. A little bit of a low chance for that, but still possible. So definitely keep your eye out for that. Going into the next day, as you can see, not really seeing a whole lot of chances for severe weather, as that cold front is going to start to be sweeping in and that instability is going to start to get out of there. But we're about to start talking about kind of the timing for these storms here next. So let's go ahead and look at that. This is the Euro's depiction here of where the kind of rain will be out there. And as you can see, we got a little bit of a low pressure system that is centered over Montana right now. And eventually, as we go into Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, we really start to see those storms start to fire up there near Iowa, Missouri, going all the way up into Minnesota, and then going into later in the evening, about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, going into then 9 p.m., you can see we get that chance for severe weather and tornadoes to kind of move off to the east. But why is this storm particularly more dangerous for tornadoes than some of the other ones that we've had? Let's talk about that. So in order to determine the tornado threat, you need to be looking at different layers of the atmosphere. We're right now looking at the 500 millibar height, or the winds, also in this part of the atmosphere, and then looking at when this thing starts to come into the northern plains, going into tomorrow afternoon, you can see that we do have a decent amount of winds. Anytime you're up in those 30 to 40 knots, there's definitely some stronger winds aloft, and these winds are going to be going in this direction, out from the south up to the north. Remember that, because that's going to be important, because we're looking for turning with height. Now we're down at the 850 millibar level, and this is kind of winds that are just above your head, a couple thousand feet up in the air, lower than the 500 millibars. So we're looking lower into the atmosphere. And pushing this forward, you can see that those lower level winds as we go into tomorrow, are not super strong, but they're definitely present. We're definitely going to have a little bit of an overlap there of those winds. And you can see that these are more coming out of the south and to the north. So there's going to be a little bit of turning with height. And there's also going to be, some, stronger winds close to the surface and aloft. So there's definitely a tornado risk there as this low pressure moves off to the east. That's not all. You also need instability, and this is the most unstable Cape parameter here, and we're looking for around 1,000 joules per kilogram in that region as those storms start to fire. And as we go into Thursday, Thursday afternoon here, you can see that there is actually plenty of instability for these storms. I know this is right around 3 p.m. here. You can see we have well over 1,000 joules per kilogram, and that's where that tornado risk is being placed, is because we have almost everything that you need for tornadoes to be there. We got the instability, turning with height, and stronger winds in different levels of the atmosphere. One of the things that are commonly overlooked, but very important in determining whether storms will even fire in the first place, is the cap. This kind of just how it sounds. It's a cap on the environment that stops storms from being able to mature and drop tornadoes. And if it's too strong when the storms are supposed to fire, you really won't see anything happen, even though you have other parameters in place. And once we get into these purples, you're really not going to see any tornadoes or even severe weather happen in those areas. So as we push this into Thursday evening, you can see that there is going to be a little bit of a capping inversion in place. So the storms are going to be battling that and have to overcome that. But you can see that as those storms fire, it is not as strong of a cap. We're getting in those grays a little bit further north, a little bit stronger further to the south. But still, if those storms can battle that cap and overcome it, we could see some stronger storms, some severe storms, and also potentially some tornadoes. Last thing that we look at is the lapse rates. These are important in determining, also if you can get storms to even grow in the first place. This is showing, the differences of temperatures in different parts of the atmosphere and how different they are. And as we go into, the evening here of Thursday, you can see that we're going to be talking about anywhere from 5 to 6 degree lapse rates. If these drop below 6 degrees, we're really not going to see thunderstorm activity or even tornadoes. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to be monitoring morning of, because in a higher shear environment and you don't have good enough lapse rates, you're going to be relying on storm interactions. So it won't be completely impossible, but definitely got to watch, because we're kind of on that line there of being able to have, some stronger storms out there. But definitely, everything seems to be coming into place. Definitely, I could see that tornado risk happening. Really just going to come down to monitoring what the environment is looking morning of. And if it's looking bad, I'm definitely going to go live for that. Now, we've all heard that fall has been briefly canceled out there. Unfortunately, a lot of folks have been dealing with above average temperatures for the last couple of days, and we're probably going to get a couple more days of it, but I can tell you there is some relief on the way. If I push this forward, as we go into Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to see that heat unfortunately continue to stick around, and we might be closer to the peak of that heat as we go into Thursday afternoon, right before those storms fire up in the northern plains. But a lot of the country is dealing with 90s and 80s still, especially further up there to the north. It's going to feel a little bit hotter than normal. 8-degree temperatures in the south is pretty normal, but 190, 198 and 96-degree temperatures there in northern Texas, going into Oklahoma, the 90s even making it as far north as parts of Iowa almost. That's still some, anomalously high heat. So, definitely going into Thursday, not going to see that cool down just yet. Now, going into Friday, you can see that we're still getting that widespread heat. But look at this, as that cold front sweeps in and we start to see those cooler temperatures plunge a little bit more after that storm moves all the way through into the Ohio Valley. Look at this. Boom. Really starting to see those temperatures drop going into Sunday. Look at that, all the way down into Texas as we go overnight into the early morning hours, could be in the 60s there. And then that continues to kind of push off to the east. And look at that, even more cooler temperatures as we go further into the forecast. Definitely going to feel a lot cooler with some brief little, upticks of heat. But, you can definitely tell that fall is knocking on our door, and it's really trying to establish itself as we move further and further into September and going into October. Hopefully we can get just some better, cooler, and, more temperate temperatures. All right, last thing that I want to briefly talk about here is that we are starting to get a little bit of a signal of some tropical activity there in the Caribbean. It's nothing to freak out about. We're like about 7 days off from this thing even forming, but there is a little bit of a signal there, so I do want to talk about it. Definitely not going to go past a certain point because I don't even want to look at if this thing is going to be interacting with the United States because it's just not time to do that. Where this thing goes, if I show you a model, you'll be freaking out if it's over your house, and that would be like 7-8 days in the future, which models are terrible with storms that far out. So definitely not time to be making thumbnails, throwing, putting hurricanes on the United States or anything at all. But I do want to at least show you guys the signal that everybody's been talking about. This is the GEFS, and as you can see, as we go into about 6 days out from this point, we could potentially be seeing a tropical system out there. With this, you look at these numbers. These are showing you the millibars. Some of these scenarios. There's about 30 scenarios being painted by this ensemble, and you can see that the scenarios are there 7 days out for this thing to try to form into some sort of tropical depression or tropical storm. We're going to look at other models, though, in order to compare and contrast and see what they're saying. This is the EPS model, and, pushing this all the way into the future, you can see eventually this one also starts to form around 150 hours, some tropical depression scenarios and also some tropical storm scenarios. Again, there's no guarantee that this is going to go into the United States. People are saying that, it's, just because it's in the Caribbean, it's definitely going to go in the United States. Things will definitely change as we get closer. This thing could track into Mexico still. It could kind of meander, maybe go out to sea still, or it could go into the Gulf of Mexico, but we won't know that until we get closer. But as you can see, there's definitely a signal. That's a lot of ensembles saying that something could be possible 7 days into the future. But if this thing's going to form 7 days from now, it's not going to make impacts on any land until we get to about 10, 11, 12 days. You have a lot better things to be worrying about at this point than this storm. But I just wanted to talk about it and show you, why everybody's starting to talk about this storm, because there is certainly a legitimate signal there. But that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And I will see you guys most likely not tomorrow unless we have to go live for that tornado risk. But, if we don't have to and something, happens and there's definitely not going to be any tornadoes that day, I won't go live. But I'm definitely planning on releasing another video, another update, like in not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, a video update on what to expect with this cold that's about to pull in. Is it still going to be there? And we'll go into more detail on what's causing that as well. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.